Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Delmar Chabad Center, and today's subject is going to be making the world into a beautiful gem. Well, this is an interesting idea that we're going to bring out today, and a very outstanding concept, and many people ask me about, and I'm sure you're interested also. And the idea is, what does Judaism think of the non-Jews? Now, this is an interesting concept because people do consider the Jewish people, I'd say, a little bit of a clan, their own people. And do remember that, of course, the Jewish people, even though they consist of, let's say, about 6 million people in America, which is about 3%, even less, and really in the world population, 1/3 of 1% of the world, nevertheless, that they do have an outstanding effect on the world population, as we see the Jewish influence is so great. That is in many of the sciences and many of the histories. But remember this, that Judaism, of course, stands and remains as one of the major religions of the world. And so everybody who comes from Christianity and Islam, actually, obviously the religion is started and rooted in Judaism. Now, what does Judaism consider about obviously the great majority of the world, the non-Jewish population? Should you say that if you're non-Jewish, something's wrong with you, you have to be Jewish? Well, it's very interesting to note, and many people don't know this, and that's what I'm, of course, here to inform everybody, is that the Jewish people, really it's Judaism, of course, that's what Jewish people hold by, has a very liberal and humane outlook on the non-Jewish population of the world. And suffice it to say, let's say that it is in contrast to others religions comparative to their, like I say, their non-neighbor, their other non-Christian neighbors, non-Islam neighbors, what the dogmatic religions hold by. What does Judaism actually say? Judaism doesn't say, for example, you're doing anything wrong by being non-Jewish. Let's just go to basic number one. So if there is nothing wrong being non-Jewish, what does Judaism want the non-Jewish person to be or to behave? Now, this is a very interesting concept in Judaism. It's called the 7 mitzvahs, or the 7 commandments of Bnei Noach, the Noahide laws. Now, we all know the story about Noah, that the first man was Adam. Adam was the first man in the world. There was a number of 10 generations. The world got so bad, so immoral, so inhumane, that the world had to be destroyed. The Almighty had to start all over again. And he did start all over again with Noah. But he learned his lesson, so to speak, the Almighty, and then he said that, listen, that this world was reckless before Noah. Like I said, there's no rules, no laws. If you can imagine that. There's no society. People were evil, that they were evil to in a moral sense, in an ethical sense, and they're immoral in any religious sense also, which goes really hand in hand. So, somebody says, now we're going to bring out 7 major laws to the Noahide laws. That's why they're called Noahide, for calling to Noah. And these are, and I'm going to be reading a little bit excerpts from a pamphlet. It's called, like I said at the beginning of the show, Making the World into a Beautiful Gem. It's actually put out from the Diamond Center in Israel. It is in English, and if I forget to announce that any person wants a pamphlet for themselves, then they can just give me a ring or write me a letter at the end of which is shown at the end of the show, and that would be more than happy to get one over to you. There are a few if you want to give them to the friends. It's just the Diamond Center has made this pamphlet, and they just compare it to the world like a diamond. And diamond's a very interesting example. In many cases, we'll only bring out the one thing here also, that the diamond itself has to be perfected. If you give a wrong knock, if you form it the wrong way, it turns a precious diamond or a gem into a piece of junk. And in a way, that's what they compared to the world also. The world, in a way, is like a diamond. It's very genteel. It's very accurate in many senses of the word. And if you're going to treat the world the wrong way, then ultimately, God forbid, the world's going to turn into a piece of junk. But if you treat it the right way, and you tune it in the right way, and you act with the world the right way, and as human beings, we're the people who can really have a choice in the effect. A dog's going to be a dog no matter what they do. The sun's going to shine no matter what it does. But the human being, of course, has their choice to to treat the world, like I say, a little bit off-kilter and make it into a problem, or complement the world and making a better place to be. Therefore, the diamond people saw that this was actually a good example of how the world is compared to a diamond. And if we would just act right and just hit the diamond on the right way, or act in the world in the right direction, then we'll make the world into a gem instead, like I say, instead of destroying this world. Now, number one, let's go back, take it step by step. Number one, that this is what Judaism says about that the non-Jew, the code of the non-Jews. Now, just keep also in mind, let me just finish off that idea, is that it says in the Maimonides, who's actually the biggest, one of the biggest scholars, if not the biggest scholar in Judaism. So you can't have any bigger authority than that. And he says clear, he states and codifies clear as a bell, that if a non-Jew keeps these 7 laws that we're going to say, he assures that non-Jew of a place in the Olam Haba, or the next world. He calls actually a mechosid, actually a pious person, and gets the next world. And like I say before, you're not going to see that being Jewish or any of the Jewish practices part of these 7 laws, because, again, as we said before, it's very humane. Every person has their function in the world. We're not all the same. I mean, we all have the same vote and democratic, but we are individuals. Men are men, women are women, and people are coming around to seeing that also. It doesn't mean that we have to have different rights in that sense, and like I say, we have different votes, but in a certain sense that the people are individuals. There is a common denominator. We are all human beings. There's many common denominators in many parts of life, but on the other hand, there's many things that we are very individually different. You say men and women, for example, are different, have their different functions. And we could also say about Jews and non-Jews. And when we say people are different, again, that doesn't mean superior or inferior, and that's not at all the connotation that we're trying to say. That we're trying to say that different but equal. And that's, like we say in many issues, and we can't get into that here, but we've devoted many shows, we'll have to talk about it in many other shows, the role of women in Judaism, which, again, many people fear have the wrong connotation that they are women are second class citizens in Judaism. It's totally false, totally wrong. But what Judaism does say, we are different, and we do have different functions, but we're equal. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. If every part is different, but if you interlock all the different pieces, you get one beautiful picture. And that's the way the world is simply also. That if every piece is a piece in the world, and every piece is important, or if there's one piece missing, you're going to have a hole, like, say, in the jigsaw puzzle. So too in the world. If any part is missing, there's something going to be wrong. On the other hand, we aren't all the same. We have to know who we are and what we are and how we fit into the greater scheme of things. So therefore, this is what Judaism says about the non-Jews. It doesn't make it, not everybody has to be Jewish, not everybody has to be non-Jewish. The Jewish people should be good Jewish people, non-Jewish people should be non-Jewish, good non-Jews and Gentiles, and the 7 laws that we're just about trying to start. And therefore, it'll be a happy and a beautiful world for everybody, again, like the diamond. If everybody works in the world and is synchronized into what we're supposed to do, then the world will be better off. And the problems are not from the Almighty. People say, oh, there's problems here and there's problems there. It's not because of the Almighty. It's because of people. We have our free choice, and you make your own life, and you make your own world the way you want to make it. You have the good raw material, as I think everybody could see. It's a beautiful world. But like we say, that it's in hands of the human beings to destroy it, or hopefully make it actually a better world and a more humane world for everybody to live in. So without further ado, let's just start with those 7 laws that are so important. Now, number 1 is belief in God, do not worship idols. And I'm reading from the text. Man, the weakest of creatures, is surrounded by forces of life and death far greater than himself. Confronted with the vastness of these universal forces, man might well try to serve them in order to protect himself and better his lot. Let me interject here. This is not from the context, but that's what you have me as a teacher to explain things to you and what's happening. That the world, for example, is like the major idols, with the sun and the moon and the constellations, and they are greater than a person. How can you compare yourself to the sun or any of the constellations or the planets? It's ridiculous. So therefore, and they do, the sun and the moon and the rain, obviously give us our life. I mean, maybe we're not farmers today, Of course, if we'd be farmers, feel more dependent on the natural weather scheme. And now today we just worry about if the stores are going to be open when we're ready to shop. But of course, even if you do shop, everybody does shop in a store. Obviously, the food comes from the elements. And if there's droughts, all the science in the world can't do anything about a drought or a flood. That's something that we're all dependent on. So therefore, that's what he's saying, that in the olden times, people could say, maybe, I need the sun, I need the moon, I need the rain. Let me serve these natural forces, because this way, if I serve them, if I pray to them, well, then they'll do me a good turn and give me what I need. But the essence of life, however, is to recognize the Supreme Being who created the universe, to believe in Him, and accept His laws with awe and love. We must remember that He is aware of all our deeds, rewarding goodness and punishing evil. We are dependent on Him, and to Him alone do we owe allegiance. To imagine that there could be any other power that could protect us or provide for our needs is not only foolish, but perverts the purpose of life, and as history has shown, potentially unleashes untold forces of evil in ourselves and in the world. So, of course, this is number one, the belief in God. Let me give you an example of what it is. That we are in a, let's say, in a tinsel world in a certain sense. I mean, it's a real world, but we don't see through things. You have to be a little bit smart and have perception to see the real forces behind the world. Let's say, for example, that you saw a lumberjack knocking down a tree. Well, who knocked down the tree? In actuality, the lumberjack maybe never even touched the tree. It was the axe that cut down the tree. So when you see the tree get cut down in full, and say, wow, that's a good axe. It's a good axe. He cut down the tree. Again, that's obviously ridiculous to anybody to see that, because they know it's, well, maybe the axe is the one that actually touched the tree and actually cut down the tree. On the other hand, we all know it wasn't the axe that knocked down the tree. It was the lumberjack, the person behind the axe, that knocked down the tree. And that's exactly the same thing that's happening in the world. What we see, maybe that's what I'm saying, we don't see a normal situation. You see a lumberjack and an axe. Nowadays, maybe you see only the sun and the moon and the rain and just only the actual things that give us our food or give us our life. So we say, ooh, that may be the main thing, the sun and the moon, the rain and all the constellations. They are the things that are giving us our life. We have to say no, that we have to know that there's a force, and it only makes sense that there is a force controlling these things. The sun and moon cannot just go around. Something had to create them. Something has to be leading them and conducting even today. So therefore, that's what we have to understand, that there is a force behind all the natural forces in the world. And we proceed to 2. Respect God and praise Him. Do not blaspheme His name. When we feel disappointed with life, when things do not work out as they should, how easy it is to point an accusing finger and blame everyone, everything, even God. Loyalty and trust are crucial in life. To blame God, curse, or to curse others in His name is an act of disloyalty akin to treason. It is an act which undermines the basis of all order and stability of which a just society must stand. Again, everybody has problems. I've never met a human being that doesn't have problems or difficulties in their life. But of course, we have to understand who's in charge of the world, and there is someone in charge of the world, and we can't just buck and be angry at them. For example, I'll give you a simple example, which again you can all relate to. That when a child has to take a bath, many times the children don't like taking baths, and they're screaming and they're yelling. Someone would come into the house, they would just say, oh, what's this? You're torturing your child, you're punishing your child. The child is screaming bloody murder. He said, what kind of business? What's happening? Well, I just told my child he's got to take a bath. He's dirty. He can't be dirty. What kind of business is this? He says that he's got to take a bath. So we see that different people have different perceptions. Now, we all know, of course, hopefully, that it was the best thing in the world for this parent to tell their child, take a bath. This is the best thing. I'd cheer a child. If it's the best thing, they should be dancing and happy. The parents taking care of their child and doing the best thing for them. And then instead we see the child screaming and yelling. So again, this is almost an idea for ourselves also. We, in a way, are children because we don't understand. What's the difference between a child and an adult? So wait 5 years, 10 years, the child understand that a normal human being, to be healthy and to be good, has to be clean. And they'll understand it also, and you don't see adults screaming and crying about taking a bath because they understand. A little child may not understand. And in a way, that's why I say, well, how are we really different? When we don't see something and something's a little difficult, something's a little bit painful, well, then maybe we're like the little child, that we don't see with the real good behind it. We don't have to start, like he says, cursing and yelling and screaming and crying. Maybe we should just see the good in it and just try to be above the situation. Number 3, respect human life, and that means do not murder. So far, I just want to bring out to you a little bit. We're in the middle of it, and keep this theme in mind. I don't think anything's too difficult. No one's telling any person to jump off a building or knock their head against the wall or whatever have you, give $1 million. No one's telling anybody these kind of things. But as you see, these things are very much an opportunity of every human being. And I don't know how many people disagree with them. With one time, the Chabad movement, and we tried to not only better Jewish life, but like we're doing now, is trying to better human life. We came to a mayor of one town and said maybe make a resolution just that may become more official. And he says, let's see what you have here. What are you connotating? So he looked through it as we're doing exactly right now. It's very difficult, he says, to disagree with any of these. And that's why I say also, that's what I'm saying, I think in one sense every person at least it could admit to these things that these are the right things. No one would want to worship an idol or blaspheme God or, like I'm saying now, do not murder. I don't think there's too many human beings that are going to sit here and disagree with any of these 7 principles. So in one sense, they're very easy if the people would just be directed and educated that these are the right things and not being told you do what you want and just can act any way you want. There has to be a set of goals, and people are essentially good, but they do have to be trained and they do have to be educated, and of course that's what we're doing now. 3, respect human life, do not murder. The record of man's inhumanity to man begins with the story of Cain and Abel. Man is indeed his brother's keeper. The prohibition against manslaughter, including abortion, comes to protect man from the bestial tendency which lies within him. Man, the attacker, denies the sanctity of human life and ultimately attacks God who creates us in his image. We are not... Now, a person who comes in the street and takes an automatic machine gun and kills someone in the street, I don't know how many people, and even in prisons, that do other things would say that's proper behavior. So I'm going to safely say that 99.9% of human beings will say that taking a machine gun and killing somebody, that's just a wrong thing to do. But on the other hand, there are certain types of murder in our society that people are thinking that it is proper. Suicide machines, for example. Now, I know what people say, and I, of course, am a rabbi, and I visit people in the hospitals probably more than most people except for doctors do. And I would simply say that I also understand how grievous it is for a person to be suffering from an illness. On the other hand, and this is the big other hand, that a person has to understand that we are not in charge of life and death. We are, just like I say, servants of God. We have the right to heal. Yes, it does say that, and a person should do as much as they can to help a person heal and be better off and healthy. On the other hand, we are not in charge of determining who's in life and death. And I'll just, even if it sounds half cruel, let me explain even another parable to you. The Nazis in the Holocaust actually started, and there's a famous book out, and you can read it yourself. It's called The Nazi Doctors. Meaning, as we all know, again, history, that the Germans thought they were the master race. Therefore, anybody who was handicapped, mentally retarded, or whatever have you, that they said they weren't fit to live. So, well, I mean, I don't know if you would agree with that or half agree with that. If a person's totally handicapped, then you would also maybe agree with it. It sounds maybe nice at first step. Just like saying a person's comatose in their hospital bed, what good are they? They're just suffering. Better to put them to death. Well, as we all see, and we have surely 100% hindsight, 20/20 hindsight in looking, the Nazis doctors, first of all, maybe you'd even half agree with them. Someone who's totally mentally retarded, brain damaged, handicapped. Maybe some people out there saying, no, maybe they should really be killed because you're doing them a favor. What kind of life is it? But we see the next step is, well, I don't like those kind of people. I don't like the Jews, and I don't like the gypsies, and I don't like the communists, and I don't like this kind of people, and I'll kill them. Just like I killed the handicapped people, I don't think they were fit to live. I don't like other people. So we see, and this is not, I'm not talking anything about theory here, because we do have 20/20 hindsight about this, is that once we play God, and we're saying this person's not fit to live, and that person's not fit to live, and I'm not even going to disagree with you that it's not a kind of life. I'm not going to say someone should remain comatose, and I think that's humane. All I'm saying is I'm not in charge of that person who's life and death. And therefore, I'm also not in charge of anybody if I don't like them or whatever have you, that I think, well, I'm going to start saying that they should die either. It's not my business as a human being, and this is what we're saying here. It's not really anybody's business as a human being to decide who should live and who should die. Number 4, respect the family. Do not commit immoral sexual acts. The Bible states it is not good for man to be alone. So the Almighty made a helpmate for Adam, and in marriage, He blessed them. In a wholesome family, man's creativity finds meaningful expression. Wholesome families are the cornerstone of healthy communities, nations, and societies. Nations which have condoned immorality, adultery, homosexuality, sodomy, incest have never lasted long. Sexual immorality is a sign of an inner decay which spawns a ruthless society, bringing confusion into God's life plan. Now, this is interesting, and of course, people can know that it's obviously I'm going to say it's a problem in America. I don't know how you feel about this over here. It's a situation in America, all these different ideas. But again, trying to be objective about these and sitting back and not looking at what you personally feel, that you have to look at societies. And the ruin of society is not because they make less cars in Detroit. It's not because even that they make less bullets or whatever have you. If you look at a historical perspective, the breakdown of society is the morality of that society. And if, again, we have 20/20 hindsight, we don't have to talk theory, that we're talking about the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. Anybody wants to read that book again is more than welcome. Have you look at it objectively. It wasn't because the Romans were beat because of military might. That's not why they fell apart. I mean, it was only afterwards, after the fact that they started decaying, and then enemies came and finally destroyed them. But that wasn't the first, that they were a whole society, and then they were destroyed militarily. They were destroyed from within. They decayed in their moral fabric of their society. That's what eventually led to the breakdown of their whole empire. And I don't know if we can say that, but maybe I'll go out on a limb and saying that's a little bit what's happening in America also. It's not the Japanese economy that are hurting us, and it's not the Arab oil that would be hurting us. It's not any of these outside forces. The only thing that would destroy America is ourselves, the decay of our own selves and our own lives. That we need a strong society. We need a strong, not I'm talking with machine guns strong, I'm talking strong morally. And if we have a strong moral society and we have the courage of our moral convictions, then everything else will fall into place. Number 5, respect for others' rights and property. Do not steal. Since our sustenance comes from God, we should seek to earn it honestly, with dignity, and not through false means. To violate the property of others by robbing or cheating is a fundamental attack on their humanity. This breeds anarchy, plunging mankind in the depths of selfishness and cruelty. It was for this sin above all that the flood was brought upon the world. Well, this is very interesting, to say the least, because stealing, again, if we sit back and I just consider it, and I think most people do, the society, people are generally moral in stealing. But again, people slip up and they can give it a fancier name like ripping off, and that they can talk about just cheating on different things on different people and say, well, I'm not a bank robber. Again, I think 99% of people would say don't be a bank robber. But on the other hand, a person has to understand that if they could be honest and moral in their dealings and financially, then they actually are going to be ahead of the game also. Ultimately, it's not how much money you make, it's how you use it. You want to use that on healthy things, on good things, on blessed things, and therefore you have to have your money coming in a good way, in a clean way also. 6, creation of a judicial system, pursue justice. A robust and healthy legal system administering justice fairly creates a society worthy of God's blessing. Establishing a system of judges, courts, and officials to maintain and enforce the law is a far-reaching responsibility. This precept translates the ideal of our personal life into a formal order for society at large. It is the extension and guarantee of all the preceding laws. Well, this is very important. I just want to say about, of course, we do have system in courts, and obviously we have a big court system, but remember that the court system has to be just also. We want to be sure that everybody gets their fair shake in the penal system, and it's got to be fair. And of course, our court system and police system is in place, but we sure want it to work for everybody. And if it's fair and it's moral and giving out right justice, then even, I think, the immoral people, the people who lose the justice, respect the judicial system also. And that they say, well, I got a fair shake, and I know that I was wrong, and maybe there'll be better people afterwards, and everybody will have respect for that society. And number 7, respect all creatures. Do not eat the flesh of an animal while it's still alive. Now, of course, there are laws that really, of course, Jewish people have to hold by also, but in many laws this is a kosher law. Well, maybe, for example, people know that Jewish people don't eat pig. We're not asking that. But here it is. Do not eat the flesh of an animal while it is still alive. God gives man dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the heaven, over the cattle, and over all of the earth. We are the caretakers of God's creation. Ultimately, our responsibility extends beyond our family, even beyond society, to include the world of nature. Eating meat so fresh that the animal is still alive may be healthy, but it is cruel, even barbaric, displaying a decadent insensitivity to the pain of others. This law is the touchstone, if you will, that measures how well the other 6 laws are being observed. When man fulfills his potential, the whole of creation is nurtured and elevated to realize its goal, to transform the world into a beautiful gem, a place where God can dwell. Well, this is obviously an idea of cruelty taking off. And again, I mean, most people don't do it, obviously, when your chicken in your store or whatever have you. It's not living. But there were other times in society that people were cruel to their animals, and they would just take a piece of meat off a leg, chop off a leg off an animal. Sounds sick and gross, but in any case, other societies did it, and it's not allowed. And they would eat that, let's say, like a part of the animal, and not and let it live. So that isn't allowed, and it considers us, like we say, that we can't be cruel and, like he says here, and barbaric, and that's the cornerstone of society. And really, like I say, and now we're done with all 7, and I'd like to reiterate also, I mean, sitting objectively at home, I know that people mess up, maybe commit immoral sexual acts here and there, maybe they steal, they rip off here and there, certain things are wrong, but in any case, I think that anybody could sit back and objectively say that any of these 7 laws are very moral, very right, and like that person said, that mayor told me also, he said that it's very hard to disagree with these 7 laws, and it's as simple that, and there is a bottom line to it all, that I said by the Rambam, that if people would keep these 7 laws, and think about a society, imagine a society that would keep all these 7 laws, that they would have respect for others, that they would have a belief in God, at least a bottom line. Wouldn't many of our problems in society, many times when I hear what should we do about the crime and punishment and the different problems in society, wouldn't these simple 7 laws take care of the majority of problems? Wouldn't there be less immoral acts in society? Wouldn't there be less of a cruelty to others? Maybe you could walk down the streets. Crime is the #1 problem in America today. That's what people consider the biggest one problem. Wouldn't that be taken care of? That people would help each other and would respect each other and surely not hurt each other? Why, this is the bottom line, what people want from their lives, and this is what they want from a society. And even though it's a little tricky that these 7 laws don't seem to be too big and too difficult, and that's a good thing, at least you can agree with them. On the other hand, we just want to say officially and legally that these legally, a Jewish legal system, that if every person kept these laws, the world would be better off. They surely would be get the next world spiritually, but we don't have to even wait for that. In this world, in this society, today, in our everyday life, we'd have a beautiful and the right life, and hopefully we should all see it. Thank you very much. Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Delmar Chabad Center, and today our show will focus in on the idea of tzedakah, which is the Hebrew word for charity. Now we're going to explain different levels of charity. It's not so simple just to say give charity. Of course, we could always assume you need to give something the needy person, a person who doesn't have a bite to eat, and you give them a sandwich. Well, that's charity. But it's not so simple as that, and we will explain it further on. Let me introduce this idea because many times we say, and people know this, that when you translate from one language to another, you lose something in the translation. It's also with our idea today. Tzedakah, as we translated charity, really comes from the Hebrew word tzedek, which means righteousness, which is right, meaning there's a little bit of a different connotation. It's fine difference, but it's a marked difference in any case. Meaning that the idea of charity means I have for myself, it is mine, I own it. All right, I see a poor man in the street or some institution that needs charity, fine and good. All right, it's only right. I have a home, I have a car, I have this, I have that. They should have something also. Give that person a piece of bread to eat. But by Judaism, when we say tzedek, it means it's only right. A person believes what I have, all right, hopefully you worked for it, you didn't steal it, you worked for it, you went to school to get a degree, for example, and that's why you have a better job, and which means you have better pay. So you put out the effort to get that, to get those dollars into your pocket and for this nice home, this nice car that you have. Well, surely you did work and you did earn it. On the other hand, though, nothing we understand in Judaism can come without the help from above. Meaning, so you did put your effort, you went through college, and you went through 9 to 5 or whatever your hours of the day are to go to work. Yes, and you wouldn't have had the money if you would have slept during college or if you wouldn't go into work today, you wouldn't have gotten anything. You did have your effort put into it. On the other hand, just who gave you the power to give that effort? Who was able to help you go through college? It gave you just even basically your life, your health, your energy. Who gave you the ability to be smarter to go through college and not be a dropout like someone else? Who gave you the ability